guys, I'm Chell, that's Miko, and this is Hardcore.
Hi, everyone. So nice to have you back, Celestina.
Really, I think Luke did a great job last week.
Yeah,
He
but
crushed it.
he just can't replace you.
That's fair. Yeah, I think you also did a great job last week.
Thank you.
You guys have no idea what we're talking about. I wasn't here last week. Miko and her trusty sidekick, Luke, a stuffed
Duck.
duck. How'd you come up with Luke for his name?
He has a little name tag which says Luke, and it's the light bringer.
Oh my god, he has his own name. I love that. Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, they crushed it last week on environments, where to move, how to move, and if you haven't already, definitely listen to that episode after and or before you listen to this one. No really right or wrong way to do our podcast, but if you want to see a solo Miko episode, it was a quality one.
Thank you. Except for this episode. Now we're going to have actually a structure. Well, a three-parter is waiting for you guys. That should
Look
be
at
watched
us
in
planning
order.
ahead. Yes, okay, there you go. Yeah. So this is the first one, and then next week we'll put out the second, and then, that's how that goes. So, welcome to the first one, guys. Today we are talking about roll gates. So, this, I think, is probably one of the most overlooked aspects of human design. And until you suggested this episode and we started diving into it, I didn't understand the impact and all of the intricacies of this, and I think it's really cool. So, roll gates are not just gates that are within one's body graph, they are archetypal costumes, if you will. So, think of it as wearing your archetypal costume into the theater of intimacy, of bonding, and self expression. But here's the wild part about it: you don't even need to have these gates defined on your chart to be able to live them out, which is not something you typically hear in human design, right? Like, your body graph is your body graph and that's it. But with these roll gates, they're activated through your profile. So they shape how you pursue, attract, nurture, guide, seduce, whether you are aware of it or not. So if you've ever wondered why you're always end up as the confidant or the seducer or the bold one or the one who pulls away, the next couple of episodes are really going to help shed some light on all of that for you. So we're going to break down, over the course of these next episodes, the 6 primary roll gates, and you can explore how each of those profile lines, each of your profile lines, filters through in those themes of each of them. Miko, will you start us off?
Oh, you already did a great introduction regarding the roll gates. There are 6 of them. They are divided into collective, individual, and tribal. And as you mentioned, they don't need to be defined in your chart for you to express it. So everyone has different roles in life, whether it is in an individual scenario where it's about expressing your unique potential, or in the collective sense, as in how are you encountering people? How are you with the collective outside of your tribe? And in the tribal way, how do you bond with individuals? So we're going to divide this into 3 parts, as mentioned previously. And we're starting with the collective gates. These are gates 7 and 13. Before diving into this, however, we also would like to explain to you how this works if you do have one of those gates defined. So your profile, first of all, has a conscious and a subconscious side. You will have a personality side. So this is how you see the world, how you see yourself as well, how you feel your personality is, your character. And then in the design side, the unconscious side, this is also going to tell you a lot about your physical body. So when we're talking about the lines within each of these gates, this is an important thing to consider. So if nothing is defined in your chart when we're talking about these gates, you would look at your profile, you would look at your personality side, and this is how you see yourself. And when you don't have it defined and you look at your design side, this is how your physical body is going to navigate through the world. So these are going to be specifically important when we're talking about the bonding strategies, for example, because in the bonding strategies or roles that you take on, your body will maybe want to engage with someone, but your personality will want to engage with someone else. So there will be this bit of a feeling of being torn apart in certain aspects, but it's still going to make sense to you when we're going to go through it. The other part, if it is defined, if one of those role gates is defined in your human design body graph, you need to also consider the line of your defined gate. So what I mean by that, the profiles are lines, and each gate has 6 lines. And when we're going to go through these role gates, we are going to divide these role gates into these 6 lines, and you will take a look at your profile if it's not defined, if this gate is not defined in your chart. And even if it is, you first look at your profile line. So let's say you have a 6-2 profile. This would mean that you have a 6th line and you have a 2nd line. In this case, the 6th line is your personality and the 2nd line is your design. So you would take a look at the role gate that we talk about. For example, role gate 7 or role gate 13, the ones that we're going to be discussing now today. And you would look at the 6th line of gate 7 and 13, and you would look at the 2nd line of gate 7 and 13. If you do have a definition in gate 7 or 13 in this case, you would also take into consideration the line that is defined in your gate. So if you have a 4th line that is defined in that gate, it will give you an additional flavor to this gate. So you also will need to take that into consideration. So I feel like this covers the basics of how to navigate these role gates. And another thing to understand is that these role gates, especially the ones that we're going to be talking about now, they have a lot to do with your face. So today we're going to discuss which masks are you wearing when you're out and about in the world. These masks, so the gate 7 and gate 13, are connected to the cross of masks. And they show a lot in your face. So when you're navigating in the collective, when you're meeting strangers out and about, you will be wearing a specific mask. And you're going to have different kinds of masks, whether it is an internalization process or an externalization process. So every single one of these 6 gates have are either in connection to internalizing something or externalizing something. In this case, the first one, the collective gates that we're talking about, we have gate 7, which is the externalization, and we have gate 13, which is the internalization. So that means you're going to need to first internalize something, work through it within yourself, before you even have the chance to externalize it. And these two are going to be different. You're going to have a quote-unquote different mask when you are just with yourself in your own process than the one that you show when you're externalizing. So as an example, just imagine you're in your office and you're thinking about something internally and you have a certain face and someone walks into your office and they see that face, but they don't recognize it because it's not usually the face that you show to people. So you snap out of it and you put on your other face and the person is a bit confused because they just can't relate to it because it's not the face that you show to the world or the mask that you show to the world. And it's a natural process. It's not something that should be rigid. That's very important throughout this whole episode. We want to make sure that you understand that there is no one mask that you will be wearing all the time. There is not one role that you will take on every time. And as another example, as a mother, you will have a different role than as a lover, for example. So understanding that these roles are shifting and changing is a very important process, because if you just latch on to one of those roles with your mind, it's not going to work, and your face is going to get stuck in a certain role, and that is going to make you age faster. It's going to make you look older faster. So don't be rigid, don't be stuck. Continuously follow your strategy and authority with whatever process you're entering. That is so, so crucial, that you don't use your mind when you're looking at this, that you're not, oh, I'm this, I'm that, and I need to behave like this or that. But you need to look at the situation that you're in and go through your strategy and your inner authority to make the right decisions when it comes to this. Would you like to get started with? No.
Yeah, Miko, sure. I'll start from now. I feel like you've taken us to the moon and back already, but yeah, let's pop into this. So as we look at the visuals that she has up, the 7th gate and the 13th gate, the 7th gate representing the externalization of the role, and the 13 representing the internalization of the role. This is broken down into the trigrams. So the lower trigram being the 1, 2, 3, the upper trigram being the 4, 5, 6, and what's important about this is to keep in mind what your profile is, right? So if you're a 6-2, if you're a 1-3, if you're a 2-4, please keep that in mind when you're looking at this trigram and when you're looking at these role gates in particular. So gate 13, taking in of the other. So the basic nature of this role gate is the empath, representing the internalization of this gate, the fellowship of man and secrets. The qualities of this are going to be taking in others and representing receptivity and empathetic connection to others. So the first line of this gate, the personality internalizes the collective social energy. They take people in through that empathetic understanding. The second line of this gate is the bigot. I don't always love the verbiage that's used in human design, but here we are. So being selective about who they choose to let in, but they can also be democratic and open with the same people that they wouldn't let into their inner circle. So being selective about some of these close relationships, but still being fair in their public-facing interactions. Again, consider what Miko was saying before, right? The masks of it not always being on, not always being off, and not always being the same in each of these situations. The third line is the pessimist. So with this line, you may feel that you are naturally pessimistic in how you take people in. The risk here is, instead of simply internalizing this, that you've started to externalize this. And again, this is still about taking it in, but being pessimistic and then trying things out for themselves, whether it's valid or not, for you and for the other. Now you want to say something.
Yes, because when I was really learning about this, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense with the third lines, and why I have a challenge sometimes with third lines, because they don't just internalize this process. So this is very, very important. You are pessimistic in nature when you're taking others in, especially strangers or the collective, but it's not about externalizing it. So you don't need to go around complaining all the time or being pessimistic about everything all the time. It's just your natural taking in of things and being like, okay, I encounter this person, but I'm going to be skeptical and I'm going to maybe even be pessimistical about them. And the sixth line is about being optimistic. The interesting part about that, however, as well, is that the sixth line goes through a pessimistic stage, because we are divided into 3 stages in our lives. And potentially there is a tendency to be pessimistic up to your 30s approximately, up to your Saturn return. And then you have to switch over. Then you suddenly have to become optimistic in the way that you view things. So, but we do go through this process. But for me, it's very challenging to have pessimism or people that are pessimistic. I'm a natural, very optimistic person. And I found this super interesting when I was reading about this. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense sometimes. So yeah, it gave me the opportunity to just, if someone does choose to express it as a third line and not just internalize it, to be like, okay, yeah, this is them being a third line. How did you feel about it when you were reading this?
You describing it is giving me a different perspective. I'm trying to think of third lines in my life that I've encountered in this way. And yeah, that is really interesting. So I wonder if they have that full connection then, if it's more apt to be, like, right, if they have the full 1333, is it more apt to externalize it verbally versus keeping it in?
Could very well be as well, yeah. And additionally to that, so pessimism is often viewed badly, and I really want to bring this across, that you being pessimistic towards something or someone gives you the opportunity to then try it out for yourself and to see if your pessimism was correct in the first place or if it wasn't. So this is why it is there inside of you. Yeah, it's just not something that needs to be externalized.
All right, cool. The 4 line, the fatigued. When you are always available to network, a fatigue or an aspect of fatigue can set in, as well as the realization that people have become homogenized and there's less differentiation within that network or within that group. That can also lead to fatigue. If you're out there as a 4 line in your network, you may need a little bit of diversity and variety and to schmooze in different places that make you feel whole and accepted in a different way.
Yeah, this for me was also a very interesting realization with the 4th line, because they're known to be the networkers. They're known to, and it is super important for them to have this network, but it is also important that they do the networking, they do the work, and not that anyone else can take it over. So as a 4th line, you can't be telling your secretary, hey, you take care of my network, because then it's not going to be authentic anymore. So you really need to do your own networking, but that can cause fatigue. And that's also why the 4th line is so well known to also need their space and time alone. And the realization that everyone is just becoming very similar in nature, that the 4th line can't handle it or doesn't like that, that was also very interesting, because they do like this diversity and this difference, what keeps them engaged and interested in their network.
Line 5, the savior. So we've discussed upper trigrams and lower trigrams a ton here. So this verbiage actually really makes sense for what a 5 line would be projected upon, I think. So this being, think of it as a window that you can't see into, right? So the savior, this one is about finding roles for people, a role for anyone in a way that aligns with your true specific role or purpose in life. And this line tries to break down that homogenization. And a 5th line can find a practical direction, but it's not something to externalize. It's something that they can help align themselves to a role on their own for themselves. And this comes with being projected upon and people saying, oh, this would be great, go in this direction. But it really breaks down to what feels best for you, the 5th line.
Yeah, and it's also sometimes just by being in someone's presence, you shift their potential of seeing their true direction. So that's a tricky one, because as a 5th line, you're being projected upon to be the savior. If you are accepting the wrong types of tasks or savings to be done, if you're like, yeah, I'm going to help you with this, I'm going to help you with that, but it doesn't actually come from your inner authority and your strategy, then you end up having a lot of challenges, because people are going to say, yeah, but you said that you're going to quote unquote save me, and you feel like you're just leaving disappointments left, right, and center. So with the 5th line, this projection is very real. It's very big if you're not making it with the right decisions. And actually what you should or can do is to simply help them figure out their own solutions in a lot of ways. So it's not about you stepping in and externalizing this savior and being like, okay, I'm going to help you with this, 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 but to help them find their own solutions. And fifth lines are very good in finding the right positions for people. When it comes to work, for example, if you're the head of the company, you have a tendency to be very good at being like, okay, you would be great in this role. But instead of just telling them, hey, you would be great in this role, it may be more of an approach of, okay, let's figure this out together. Let's let them come to their own conclusions.
Love that alternative approach. And last but not least, the sixth line, the optimist. Miko talked about this before when we talked about the third line. Essentially going from that internal process of the third line pessimist to an on-the-roof phase for 6 lines of being more optimistic about everything. But there's also no clear insight for the 6 line off-the-roof phase. So like the wise owl, like how we change. So stay tuned to the podcast for the next 30-ish years and we'll keep you updated. Kidding. But also not. Yeah, so that is Rollgate 13 in a nutshell for each of the lines.
Oh my God, just imagine we'll hear in 30 years still doing this.
I feel like at that point we're gonna be little projections on people's desktops. Like we'll be standing there like Star Trek style, you know?
Yeah.
Holograms.
So when it comes to the 7th gate, now we're stepping into the externalization. And another thing to consider about these collective roles is that they are very much linked to the future and the past. So in this 7th gate, it is linked to looking into the future. The 13th gate is more about looking into the past. And we've talked about this in another episode where we talk about different styles of leadership. And when we're talking about looking into the past, this means that you're looking at patterns that have worked in the past to then make the right conclusions for the future. The 7th gate looks into the future and it kind of comes up with solutions that could work for the future without looking at the past. So it's a different type of leadership, a different type of going about how you want to move forward. And it is very strongly connected to the logical aspect. So the collective circuitry in this 7th gate is logical, whereas the 13th gate is abstract in nature. We're going to be looking again at the lower trigram, which is in nature more self-absorbed. So it's not about sharing all the time. And we're now, as I said, in the externalization process. So we are talking about sharing aspects, but the lower trigram is not here to continuously share. And we feel this. When I was rereading this, I was like, oh my God, I get it why I don't like to be on Instagram all the time. We're going to get more into this in the later roll gates because there is an element that talks about when we step out, we want it to be beautiful and we want it to have a meaning. And yeah, I feel like this Instagram presence is a lot of pressure and it's a lot of I have to do it on a regular basis to be seen, and I don't like that. I only want to share when I feel it's right, when I feel it's good, when I feel it's beautiful, and that really, really made so much sense to me. So in this case, the first line, we have something that is called the authoritarian, and you always want to look at both of these sides. So you have the empath in the internalization, and then you have in the externalization the authoritarian. And you kind of have to link these two things together. So I'm not going to go through what we just discussed, what Celestina just described, but you just bear that in mind that you need to bring these two elements together for you to have the right internalization process and then be able to externalize it. So the first line as an authoritarian really needs a solid foundation. They need to feel safe before being able to express themselves and externalize their role of self in the interaction with others. So that's what the 7th gate role is about. It is about the role of self when you're interacting with others. So you will show up more as an authoritarian, but before you're able to do that, you really need to have the knowledge or the insights or the foundation to feel safe to do so. The second line needs to be called out. So this is something that is so, I see that as well. Even in connection, I know I talk about Instagram and social media, but this is something where I relate to most. I never felt like I was being called out to share things on Instagram. And I feel like this is also part of why I only have a very limited amount of followers on there. But when I step onto Inside Timer, I love it. I feel a completely different energy. And this is so important when it comes to externalizing what is inside of you. And the second line needs to wait for a call. And that call needs to be right. So Ra even says that there are only very, very, very few calls out there that the second line should follow. So there are not a lot of moments where you receive the call and it's the right type of call. So this is again where the inner authority comes in, where your strategy comes in. So additionally, if you are a projector, you probably have to wait double the amount of time to be invited out and then to be called out for the talents that are inside of you. And the second line is called the Democrat. So this is something that Celestina touched on earlier. On one hand, you have the bigot and you have the person that is very selective about who they choose in their inner circle or in people that they feel confident about. But those people that decline in their internalization process may actually be the people that they give the outer authority to. So it's not the same thing. And this is a process that you really need to walk through it, and you need to figure out, okay, these are my friends, but these are people that I can see in higher positions. So this is kind of what the second line does. It's the internalization process, and who you let close to you may be very different than the people that you think are actually good at leading or at doing things that where you feel, okay, this person I can give an authority to. The third line is the theme. Life bumps into them. And by doing that, they can then step into being the anarchist. So they have things that they try out and they see things that work, that don't work. And if they feel like something doesn't work, once they've gone through their pessimistic process, their internal process, they can then, once they've verified it and they know for sure, okay, that's how it is, they can become the anarchist and they can really rebel and step out and kind of really tear things down. So the externalization, again, needs to be very carefully chosen, because otherwise you're going to tear things down that weren't there to be torn down in the first place. So be very mindful about just when you step into this anarchist warrior mode, kind of. When we're stepping into the upper trigram, things become more transpersonal. This also goes for the profiles, by the way. So when you're looking at your profile and you are part of the lower trigram, it's more about the internalization process. And when you're stepping into the upper trigram, it's more about the externalization process, or the transpersonal process. Let's say it this way, not to get confused with these role gates right now with internal and external, but it's more about the transpersonal, and the lower trigram is more about the personal process. So if you have a profile that is all in the lower trigram or all in the upper trigram, it will be more personal or more transpersonal in nature. So in this case, in gate 7, we have now line 4, the abdicator. And the abdicator is a limitation which can be externalized. So what that means is that the fourth line really needs a network. They also really need to invest a lot of time in the network. We kind of talked about this in the internalization process already, but you really need to figure out who are the right people. You need to also figure out the amount of time that you spend with these people in order not to get fatigued. You need to find the quality of people that feel right to you. And when a fourth line feels that they're standing alone in an argument, they usually don't try to influence. So this is how important the network for a fourth line is. As soon as you feel like you don't have the support, you may feel like you just will drop it. You won't want to go against all the other people. Not like the anarchist. The abdicator is more like, okay, if I have my people that are going to support me and my idea and my vision, then I can do it. And if I don't have that, I'm likely not going to do it unless you're a 4-1. That profile seems to work a little bit differently. They often do still continue to try to influence others. But yeah, if you are another type of profile, the tendency is there that when you don't have the support, you're not going to go forward with it. The fifth line is called the general. And this, I thought this one was very interesting because Ra was talking about this with an example of his kids. So him being a fifth line, when he tells his kids that they shouldn't be doing this or that they are punished for something that they have done, the general can come out, but they don't take him seriously because it didn't feel right to him to do that. So you need to still follow your strategy and inner authority to make these decisions when the general comes out, when the abdicator comes out, when the administrator comes out, things like this. Because if you're not taking the right decisions at the right time, people will see it in their face. So he says when he's punishing his kids and he's like, okay, you're not going to be allowed to do X, Y, Z, they will be like, I don't even believe you. Because his face is not showing it. His face is not convincing. So that's why these things are so tightly connected to your face and to the masks you're wearing and to the right timing. So when are you using or doing these things? The general needs to be asked for their service. That's why. It can't be pushed. So in this situation, when Ra is describing his kids, the kids didn't ask for the general to come out. The general, he wanted the general to come out. And that's why his face wasn't showing what it was supposed to, what it could have shown if the kids were like, yeah, okay, can the general just come out and play right now? Which they wouldn't in this situation. But you know what I mean. So without being asked or being placed in this position of the general, there's just no access to that energy. There's no source of power. We're talking about the G center here. We're talking about a place that doesn't have a motor. It's not a motor center. It's a projected channel in nature. It's a projected gate in nature. So it needs to be asked out. It needs to be requested out to have an impact. This goes for all the lines that we've described, not just the fifth line, in this 13 and 7th gate. The 6th line is called the administrator. And that one mixes both trust and leadership, but it can also sometimes fall into hypocrisy because they have sometimes the tendency to say, do as I say and not as I do. So just be mindful of that. If you are a 6th line, you have the potential to be a really strong leader that is trustworthy, but you do need to stick to your word. Otherwise, you're going to be seen as someone that is hypocritical. So just bear that in mind. And again, take the optimist into consideration. With all of the externalization aspects, you need to take the internalization process into account before being able to even externalize. And before being able to externalize, make sure you're listening to your strategy or following your strategy and listening to your inner authority.
Well, damn. That was a deep dive into 2 of the 6 gates. I really like this visual and the way it's broken up, though, because I think that this is very helpful in understanding how you can appreciate both aspects of what is you with these 2 gates and within these 2 role gates. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I think it was. Seeing my 2s and my 6s shine and kind of being able to relate and also look at some of the different lines of other people that I know and see where some of that can come out and where the positives and the negatives can shine or shadow those words.
Absolutely, yeah. That's every time I dive deeper and deeper into human design, I'm like, yeah, this makes so much sense, and it gives so much understanding. So if you ever see a fourth line that is exhausted or fatigued, ask them about their network. How many people are standing behind you? If you feel like a third line is walking around being pessimistic all the time, like verbalizing it, you can just step back and be like, okay, I guess they're just not yet at the point where they can simply stick to the internalization. So it just gives a lot of understanding, in my opinion. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys.
Thank you very much for listening. If you would like to know more about the next part, which is going to be the individual roles, this is going to be all about how you share your unique potential with the world, how you internalize it, but also how you externalize it, then please listen to our next episode, which is going to come out very soon, or it is already out, and then you will find the link or the next video at the end of this video. So check it out.
Bye, guys. See ya soon. / probably now. Bye.
Bye. Hardcore, the Human Design Podcast.
It looks like you want to say something. Oh, it just looks like you want to sneeze. Very good. Marking that clip.